Hey, do you like high-octane action? Do you like Transformers? Want some more of that Transformers goodness after Transformers 1? Then, I have a game for you. Developed by Platinum Games, aka the studio that made Nier Automata, Metal Gear Rising, and The Wonderful 101. If you know that game, you're a homie. Sounds pretty promising so far, right? Unfortunately though, the game got delisted. Because of licensing issues, of course. So unless you're willing to obtain it through other means or have a friend that already owns it, then no, you can't play it. Just like the other budget licensed Platinum games. It's such an unfortunate thing though, because Transformers Devastation is the best one out of all of them. The game has so much love for its original material, it's crazy. And I didn't even watch the original cartoons, but I can still feel the love here. And that is actually really fun to play, also really helps, with its own unique style of character action. The way the plot was set up too feels like a cartoon, with the Decepticons being up to no good and the Autobots have to stop them from causing a devastation. By doing sick combos! On its release, the game got good to lukewarm reviews, mostly because of its very short length, even shorter than Metal Gear Rising, being priced quite high for a budget game and its supposed lack of depth. But was the game really not worth the price of admission, when it still exists anyway? Was it really too short? Was there no depth to the game? Was the game even worth your time? Well...
Snake, are you okay? Snake? Snake!
Presentation-wise, the game might look dated for some people. Me though, I think it actually looks perfect. It's up there with Dragon Ball FighterZ at being a pretty dead-on recreation of the original material but with new technology. They look pretty loyal to the original G1 designs, except for some, and they look great. The environments look vibrant too, at least when you're in the city areas, with nice shadows and lighting. Which unfortunately wasn't the case with the Proud Star and Cybertron levels, which looks pretty dry and grey in comparison. But the fact that the game also makes you backtrack through these areas didn't really help, which can make the already short game feel repetitive. On the other hand, the battle effects looks great and satisfying. Those extra huge sparks or weapon elemental trails when you swing them, or things like Sideswipe's dash skill and Megatron's Assuran Senku makes the battle visually engaging and exciting, while blinding you with visual effects so you still have the battle clarity that you need during intense battles. Unless of course, when the attack very deliberately tries to mess with your senses and spatial awareness, like Megatron's power geysers, but those are special cases. And moving on, I'm downright in love with how the game portrays Transformers time, which is called focus in this game. The screen gets a blue hue to them and everything slows down, except you. It's a really nice pop-off moment for you to go crazy on the enemies. And those very tiny slow-mo moments where every time you dodge an attack or doing a rush of vehicle attacks also feels amazing. It's a very nice detail that it gives a similar feel to those anticipation panels, where it builds up to an attack, or the Sakugan moments building up on a big attack in an anime. It can get ridiculously awesome too, when you and the enemy keeps dodging each other's attacks. Holy shit. It just feels like an anime at that point. Even the way the enemy gets blown away is also amazing, with them having these exaggerated animations which really sells the attacks, especially if you hit them with the harder hitting attacks. The sound design is also really good, very crunchy and punchy. Platinum really knows how to make their game just sound great in action, because those hits really feels like they're getting hit by a truck, literally in some cases.
Ever wonder what happens when a truck hits a delicate jet? Megatron was right. You really are useless, Starscream.
The sound when you trigger focus time is also great. It notifies that you did something cool in an obvious way so you can capitalize on it. And the music being muffled also adds a nice touch to it. And the music, holy shit, the music! They did not skimp on the music for this one at all. Which is fitting, because both Transformers and Platinum aren't strangers to great music. And they really know what type of music that really pumps the adrenaline. And everyone gets it, even the jobbers. And they don't have them just during combat, they even have them while prepping for combat.
Megatron must be stopped.
What are we waiting for?
All right, ready, let's go.
What are we waiting? Follow me. Ready?
Megatron,
What are we?
ready, let's go.
What are we waiting for?
They're going all in for a budget license game. And it really paid off, I think, with someone like me still remembering all the themes in the game, well, the big ones at least. And there's a music player too in the game, so they know that their music kicks ass. The game almost looks and sounds perfect for what they're aiming for. The frame rate is also super smooth on the PS4 too, only gets a bit chuggy when there's way too many special effects. The only real complaints that I have were the repetitive environments. Because with the game being short as it is, couldn't they avoid more environmental variety? There's only like 4 actual maps in the game. The city, the island, the Proud Star, and Cybertron. It doesn't help too that the Proud Star and Cybertron maps basically looks the same. And another thing, the player in the cutscenes looks worse than the in-game graphics for some reason. And boy, they can look pretty rough. You can't even see their shadows. And some of the faces has really wonky animations. They look kinda weird, I don't know. But still, the game looks amazing during combat. And they managed to do this without sacrificing gameplay clarity. Unless when they actually wanted to disorient you. Sounds great and has kick-ass music. Which is what a game like this needs. And the Platinum delivers hard, especially compared to the other quote-unquote budget game offerings. But what about the most important part of any game? The gameplay. Gameplay-wise, Devastation is pretty much using Platinum's bread and butter style of gameplay, and that is stylish character action, but with a few twists. And of course, this being a Platinum game, there's always mini-games to be played. So let's talk about the basic gameplay first. The game has your basic attack combos, with light and heavy attacks, which differs depending what weapon you're using. And those weapon combos, they can get pretty complex. Not to the point of Bayonetta, but much more than I expected. With the game even including pause combos and reverse beat combos. And finishing those combos with a vehicle attack, which your character will flash to indicate that they can do it. And then there's different vehicle attacks, depending on which combo you were doing, with some ending with the enemy being blown away, launch, and drill, which can also be extended. Some of these weapons can only be used by specific characters though. For example, the hammer can only be used by the big type characters, like Optimus Prime and Grimlock. And the personal weapons that can only be used by one specific character, like Prime's Energon Axe. For the weapons themselves, they all feel a different niche, with swords and axes being the traditional all-rounder weapons that you get in a character action game, with good range, good speed, good damage, and decent enough stagger. The dual sword is faster, but it has less stagger capabilities than the normal sword. Still though, it's pretty fast and has better crowd control abilities than the sword, with wide swings that can easily hit anyone in front of you, or around you. And the hammers, which are slow but powerful weapons. And by slow, I mean it can only get 1 or 2 hits in during focus time, so you better make every swing count, and don't get too greedy, you'll easily get interrupted. And last but definitely not least, the fist weapon types. They're crazy fast, very strong, and the combos just looks freaking cool. But they're also the weakest weapon type for crowd control, with them mostly only hitting one target at a time. And they also don't have the best stagger capabilities. You have to hit an enemy more times than other weapons, like the sword, before it staggers the baddie. But you really feel like a master when you're weaving in and out of attacks while punching and kicking them to death at high speed. There's also skill moves that are unique to each character, which makes the character play a bit differently. Like, Optimus can summon Estrella to do a big spin to win attack. They can knock back enemies and inflict wall stick on them, allowing you to extend your combo. Bumblebee basically has a dodge that also functions as a Roman cancel to do extended combos. Sideswipe has a big dash, Wheeljack has a big flock off shield, and Grimlock has a grapple. There's just so many things that you can do and experiment with. It's great. The game doesn't really hold the player's hands too much either. Oh shit, explains things a bit better though. Except in the first mission. And even that was just the most surface level things you can do instead of the advanced tech, which you'll learn as you play through the game.
Can you hear it, Optimus? It's calling out to those Insecticons, somehow directing them.
Oh shit, I'm sorry.
You can also use guns, and while they don't do as much damage as your melees, usually, and are limited by ammo, they're still a pretty important tool in your arsenal. They're great for doing extra damage once your enemy gets blown away by your attacks, or to take out of reach enemies. And there's a lot to choose from too, like snipers, shotguns, delayed sticky bombs, loudspeakers that will stun your enemies, grappling hook to pull baddies in, and your basic blasters, things like that. You can also have elemental buffs applied to them, which will allow you to inflict debuffs to enemies, same with the melee weapons. Well, we'll talk about that later. You can also transform into your vehicle form manually to avoid attacks or to close the distance. Attacking while in this mode gives you a lunging launcher or a rush attack, which is such a good idea, as it allows you to keep your momentum while also allowing you to combo your enemy without blowing them away too soon, and be invincible while doing it, which just feels good. Or you can just do drive-by shooting, that works too. And being a platinum staple, Witch Time is back, but with more lenient dodge timing this time around. Especially if you buy the upgrade, which allows you to still activate it if you dodge just as you were getting hit. Witch Time is just as good as ever. You can do so much damage in the stop time, it's crazy. It's also a lifesaver when you're fighting crowds of dangerous enemies. And being a character action game, you can also buy moves. Like a universal AoE that will knock back our stun baddies, being able to late dodge an attack and still activate focus time, a universal easy input launcher, a shove, basically that's a Zanko, that can stagger an enemy easily, except for some types. And of course, a parry, that works exactly like the Moon of Mahakala from Bayonetta. So you only need to press a directional button or analog stick to where the attack is coming from. Don't mistake it with Metal Gear Rising's parry input, which never happened to me, not at all. The parry itself will stagger enemies and can activate focus time, though some enemies are immune to it if they are immune to stagger, or can randomly shock them off, so it's not super reliable. The basic combat loop feels great in this game, especially in higher difficulties, where things can get a little bit intense more than usual, but never really unfair, unless you're in the challenge mode. Oh boy, Optimus and Megatron. All of them make flashes and has a sound cue before the attack, giving you ample time to dodge, which in turn will activate focus time, allowing you to counter them. And there's actually multiple versions of focus time. The standard one, and the Max Payne style bullet dodge. Every time focus time happens, it always feels so good, especially if you unleash a full combo after countering them. And the game also has a freaking built-in combo offset, which allows you to continue your previous combo if you dodge in the middle of one, instead of resetting the combo from the very beginning. Like, the game just feels so good to play, and without the need to sacrifice depth too. And speaking about depth, we haven't gotten into one of the most unexplained mechanic in the game, which is actually the real style system, Overdrive. Alright, see that Autobot symbol up there? That's your actual style meter. The better you're performing, like not getting hit, hitting enemies fast, and doing big damage, the sooner you'll activate and glow red, until it's pulsating, which means you're at full power. This makes your attack hit a lot harder and faster, being able to proc vehicle attacks where you normally don't, and charge attacks charges much faster. It's one hell of an incentive to play better, and it rewards those who understand the game well. I don't know why they don't explain this mechanic better, because it's such a lifesaver when you're fighting crowds of baddies, especially on the higher difficulties, where things can get a bit funky sometimes, and not in a good way. Like how the soft lock-on system freaks out sometimes. It's fine at lower difficulties, where there's not much target prioritizing, but on higher difficulties, it can be quite unreliable on what it actually targets, leading to situations where you want to hit this one baddie first with a rush attack, but then the game chooses a completely different baddie when you're going in for the kill. And there's no indication on who's your actual target until you attack, and sometimes this can even happen mid-combo, ruining the combat flow state and made me go from Ultra Instinct to a screechy 12-year-old in Call of Duty, as I get pounded from missing pressure. And there's no hard lock-on system to bypass this, unless you count the hard snap when you aim your gun. And even then, this can snap into an enemy that you don't want to shoot first, which can get very annoying when you're doing it in the middle of a bullet dodge. So sometimes your attack will just randomly target someone else, while you're trying to kill a specific baddie. And while turning off the soft lock-on system can theoretically help, it just turns up another problem, because turning off the soft lock-on makes the camera completely static and stays in one place at all times, even when you're fighting crowds of baddies, which can result in you very easily taking back shots of screen like no tomorrow. Yeah, unlike in most character action games, Devastation allows enemies to attack you off-screen, so you can easily take a cheap shot that takes half of your health if you weren't paying attention. They do have a visual indicator in the form of this arrow, or this target marker for ranged attacks appearing on your character. But the arrows aren't really reliable, they don't really account for the timing of the attacks, especially in higher difficulties where they attack much faster. And using sound cues sometimes doesn't work too, because some enemies have delayed attacks with the sound cue going off a few seconds before the actual attack starts, tricking you into dodging early and get hit as a result. Or it gets drowned out when the things get really hectic. Not great. The best way to mitigate this problem is to really just use your gamer instincts. I know you have those. I feel like the game should just use the way the other character action games does it, by making enemies move to where you can actually see them before attacking. Only for melees though, the ranged enemies are fine. Having a real hard lock-on system will be superb too. Or making the soft lock-on camera actually face where the enemies are, because there's so many annoying cheap backshots I got from these types of attacks. It's just not fun, you know, taking backshots. Now that we got the fundamentals out of the way, let's talk about the other gameplay stuff. As previously mentioned, you can play as other Autobots, not just Optimus. No Decepticons, unfortunately, and they all have their own thing that makes them different to play, but not by much compared to games like Devil May Cry, with them mostly sharing the same playstyle with minor quirks that makes them unique. Let's start with Bumblebee. Bumblebee, being the smallest playable character, is faster, more agile, and can extend his combos much easier than the other characters, with his vehicle attacks always proccing a second one. He also has a unique spammable dodge skill, where he can dodge into an enemy that, while not fully invincible and doesn't activate focus unless you're in overdrive, can help in extending your combos, as it can cancel anything you were doing before, and you can also use it as a forced standing reset if you corner the baddie first. Not to mention that this move also gives you access to Bumblebee's special attack, which is the back attack. Now instead of taking back shots, you're giving back shots to everyone. How the turntables. Back attacks can reliably stun baddies, and can actually be used outside the move, but it's just more reliable to use it as a follow-up to the dodge, mostly because of its long startup time, which you can't get hit out of. The dodge skill also doesn't immediately drain all your skill bar, so you can use it multiple times before you need to fully recharge it. And with B being small, he can't leave baddies, but he can beat the square out of them while they're down. He also won't be able to use weapons like hammers, as they can only be used by big type characters like Optimus and Grimlock. But even with all that, I think he's one of the most fun to play around with, and just different enough in playstyle and quirks to the other characters in the game. If you like nimble characters that can hit really fast, then Bumblebee is your pick, and he's definitely one of my main pick as well. Next, the leader of the Autobots and the notorious face stealer himself, Optimus Prime. You can say that he's the all-rounder of the game. He's the most versatile of them all, but master of none. But he's just so good at all those things that it doesn't matter. He doesn't really have a gimmick that makes him unique compared to the others, but he's able to use every weapon type in the game and can use every general mechanic, while also having top of the line stats but doesn't really surpass any character on the niche. His skill attack is also pretty basic. It's a normal trailer slime attack that you can use to extend combos or for crowd control. But even after all of that, it doesn't mean that Optimus is boring. Far from it. He allows you to familiarize yourself with the fundamentals of the game, and is still very much viable in higher difficulties. Because in the end, he's very versatile, hits like a truck, and is shockingly fast for his size, making him one of the more beginner-friendly characters while still being extremely strong. He's my main. Next one is Wheeljack. He's a medium-type character that's built for range engagements, with the highest baseline range damage potential, while also having an energy shield as a skill that allows him to shoot safely from a distance, and some protection during melee battles. He's a character that's really built for range battles, to the point that even his vehicle attacks doesn't necessarily rams the baddies, and sometimes he'll just fire missiles at them. I really don't know what else to talk about Wheeljack. As the range combat thing, yeah, not really one of my favorite genders. Sorry, Wheeljack. And then we move on to Sideswipe. Sideswipe is also another all-rounder like Optimus, but he is slightly more on the speedy side of things, having a big dash as a skill that's usable anywhere, even in mid-air. So he can chase down baddies that get knocked away, dash into attacks, and move that one tiny bit so your attacks can hit. because the dash doesn't actually cancel combos. To be brutally honest though, I feel like this dash is a bit too unreliable, mostly because of the soft lock shenanigans. And Sideswipe himself feels a bit too redundant when you have Optimus Prime and Bumblebee there, gameplay wise at least, where he's sat right in dead middle between those two with not a lot of interesting things going on. He does have two swords though, and everyone knows that two swords are cooler than one, but unfortunately for him, everyone can do it. And last but not least, Grimlock. He's the lumbering heavy hitter of the group, to the point that he's the only one other than Optimus Prime that can use hammers and beat people to death with it. He also has the highest melee DPS potential, having a grapple as a skill, making him do a grinding choke slam on the baddie or turning someone into a chew toy, which makes him completely invincible and can hurt baddies close to you. Grimlock plays the most different of all the characters, mostly because of his dino form, but there's other gimmicks like how he can grapple baddies if he dodges an attack, or stunning them with a loudspeaker, doing great damage to them, while also making him invincible during the animation, and doesn't make his grapple skill go on cooldown. The grapple also has different animations and properties depending on what form you were using when you initiate the grapple, with the normal bot form being a suplex or a pile driver, and the T-Rex form being, well, chew toy. Grimlock can also initiate grabs mid-air. This makes launchers especially potent with him. His bot form's aerial grab has him throwing down the baddie for big damage, which will also damage everyone beneath him, while keeping him in the air. Meanwhile, his dino form has him basically doing SPD but without the S, which has the same properties as a normal one, but it will bring you back to the ground. His grabs can be a bit hard to actually activate though, as sometimes I failed to activate it multiple times even though I was pressing the grab button the moment the prompt appears. However, I did find out that mashing the prompt works more often than not, so at least there's that. But the thing that makes Grimlock the most different to play of all the characters is his dino form. For one, he can actually fight in this form, with actual combos and stuff. He has a flamethrower and has a higher knockdown defense. Being a dinosaur though, means he couldn't go as fast as the other character's vehicle mode, cutscenes notwithstanding. So you might think that because of this, he has trouble gaining maximum speed to break shield enemies, but thankfully, that's not the case, as Grimlock can immediately reach maximum speed the moment you press the run or burnout button while in dino form, which allows you to do his own version of rush attacks that while it doesn't necessarily hit as much as or as hard as other characters' rush attack, it can hit a much bigger group and is safer in general to use because of how instant the rush attack iframes pops up. And yes, it can get pretty broken. Another quirk that he has is how his vehicle attacks work. Rather than just transforming into his vehicle then ramming them then transforming back, Grimlock will actually stay in his dino form whenever you use his vehicle attack, and using a vehicle attack while in dino form will also transform him back into bot form. This makes playing him feels like you're weaving between two stances, where you actually have to be good at those two different stances to fully realize his true potential. And he's definitely one of the harder characters to play in the game, but so rewarding and fun once you get the hang of him. Definitely one of my mains. All of these characters also has their own ultimates that they charge by doing sick shit during combat, like Optimus's giant off ground pound, Bumblebee's grenade spam, Sideswipe's rocket launcher spam, Wheeljack's point blank AoE flash freeze, and Grimlock's big bang attack. Out of all of them though, I feel Optimus and Grimlocks are the most practical ones, as they are instant big damage attacks with no chances of failure after startup, like missing a target with Bumblebee's and Sideswipe's ultimates, or not being able to capitalize on the instant flash freeze. While the ults could be flashier and more cinematic, they still have the satisfying impact of one, and very practical too, to the point that the AI version of Optimus spams ults like it's going out of style. And being in Transformers games, of course they can transform into their vehicle form for extra speed, running and gunning, for maneuvering, for ramming, and for doing lunging launchers. Most of them works the same, with minor changes, like Sideswipe's preference for spinning, Bumblebee being able to do two vehicle attacks one right after the other, and Grimlock's thing where he transforms into T-Rex form instead of a vehicle. But as I said before, he has his own gimmicks that makes up for it. The game also has elemental reactions and debuffs. To be honest, I don't play around with this much, but most of them boil down to, if you use a fire weapon, enemies will be set on fire. If you use an electric weapon, they will get paralyzed. If you use a freeze weapon, they'll get frozen. There's some weirder elements here, like being able to slow enemies down and reducing their defenses. The element system is there if you wanna play with it, but it doesn't require much thought. It's more of a bonus thing to make your life easier. You don't need to use the elemental reactions to beat the game on its hardest difficulty, just the loudspeaker. I do notice however that guns proc elemental reactions much faster than melee attacks, So if you wanna inflict a debuff on the enemy consistently, better bring a gun that can give that debuff, and weave that into your combo. While the elemental reactions is not deep or anything, it's still pretty satisfying to weave in debuffs by using your gun in the middle of your melee combos. Makes you feel like an actual master when you start weapon switching. And now we talk about progression. The game has a hub-ish menu called the Arc, where you can prep everyone and equip them. Here you can further customize them to suit your needs, by upgrading their stats, weapons, perks in the form of chips and movesets, which cost money as you probably can tell. And you can get weapons by getting the weapon drops from the levels and then going back to the Arc. The harder the difficulty, the better the weapon drops are, with the highest ones dropping SS grade tier weapons with good skills more often. You can carry up to 4 of these weapons, melee and range, but you still have to carry 1 melee and 1 range weapon, because it is a character action game after all, and you can't do combos with guns. Well, you can, but it's not ideal, and also because these Transformers aren't built for it. And yes, you can customize what weapon goes where in the weapon wheel, which is a nice quality of life feature. You can also equip chips to further tailor your character to whatever playstyle you like, and this can be pretty game changing, like allowing you to dodge more times in a row, longer focus duration, doing bigger damage to lower your health, things like that. They're pretty good. A more boring developer would just give like 0.5% damage increase or something. However, as mentioned before, some characters do fit some playstyles better than others. And some of the chips are just straight up useless for some characters, like bonuses that gives you more damage or grapples or back attacks, which are exclusively used by Grimlock and Bumblebee respectively. You get chips by playing the minigame. Be aware, however, that hitting the hot zone doesn't mean you'll get into a different pool of better perks. It just means that you have a higher chance of getting the higher level perks. I don't really like how this works, as it is too much of an RNG thing, which I never really liked in the first place, especially since it costs money, and you can't use anything to slow down the minigame too. I'd prefer if you can use a consumable to slow down the minigame, so everyone can at least have an easier time in getting a bigger chance of obtaining the better upgrades. At this version, it can theoretically block people off from getting into the hot zone and becoming such a money sink, which I don't think this game needs. But enough about hot zones and stuff. Here you can level the characters up too by spending money, so they can take on harder challenges. But you can just level them up by fighting baddies and leveling them up manually, which is just a nice feature. But speaking of money sinks, weapon synthesization is a true money sink. So all weapons in the game has levels, grades, and skills. Levels are self-explanatory. Grade means that the better the grade, the better its general stats is. It also means it has more slots for weapon skills. Grades cannot be upgraded. And the weapon skills. This is the thing that makes it interesting. Some weapons that you get from the field or bought from the store has weapon skills on them. These skills are general buffs to you that will affect your playstyle quite a bit. It basically works like the chips from before, just slotted into your weapon. So say that you like this weapon, it's fun to use and it has an SS grade and you want to upgrade it further. So you level it up by making it eat other weapons. This is called weapon synthesization. And when it eat other weapons, it also ate their skills, giving the skills to the weapon that ate it. And when the weapon that ate it has too many skills, you can manually choose which skill to replace, and this is great. I'm so glad that it's not RNG based. I'm so tired of games that makes the weapon skills and stats like this RNG based gacha crap system. Like there's already weapon drops, why do you need more RNG in the game? Unless it's just to drag the game out even further. And this solution just takes out the frustrations out in a quick and easy way, while keeping all the fun. What's not fun, however, is managing your inventory. Yes, there's an inventory cap. Well, just weapons. And you can only store 200 weapons in them. While that might sound like a huge number, but trust me, it's not. You'll cap very quickly, and once you've inevitably capped, the pain begins. So every time you finish a level, it will take you back to the Arc, and it will show you what weapons that you get. But if you're capping, you will have to sell or synthesize weapons to free up your inventory, and you have to do this every single time. It gets very annoying very quickly. To make things worse, you can't filter the weapons to auto-sell them if it's below a certain level or grade. You can't even bulk sell them. You have to sell them one by one, or synthesize them one by one. It's definitely the worst system in the game, and I don't know why they do it like this. Must have been time constraints or something, because this is really bad. On a less inflammatory note, the Arc also allows you to buy stuff like moves, weapons, and consumables. I don't even really use them, unless the game forces the auto repair on me, with no way of turning it off unless I just sell them off. I do like, however, that even with the consumables, you still need to get good with the game if you want to beat it on the higher difficulties. Because the consumables will increase in price the more you buy them, and they're capped, so you can only use them so many times. Especially because restarting a checkpoint doesn't refund your consumables, making them gone forever. I really don't like how you can't turn off the auto repair though. I want to hoard them so I can sell them on bulk later. Or when I actually need them later. If you're asking, why not just sell it immediately? Yeah! During the campaign, most of your time will be spent combating hostile Decepticons with some moments of open area exploration where you can find chests, secrets, collectibles, and side missions. There's quite a lot of these things too, and finding them will open up cool concept art and stuff, just like the game is evolved. Also, the platinum staple of changing the gameplay into another game for a section is still here. This time, there's violent racing games, side-scrolling racers, turret sections, and even classic GTA. They are not as numerous as other Platinum games, especially compared to Platinum original titles. But it's not necessarily a bad thing, because I don't like the Panther Wolf and Rocket section in Bayonetta. But I do actually like most of the mini-games in the Wonderful 101. You win some, you lose some. Sometimes, you also get to fight side by side with other Autobots, and you get to see a glimpse of what the multiplayer character action game might look like. Unfortunately though, there's no multiplayer co-op in this game, which could have made the short length more palatable to people. I've seen the potential in DMC5, it was like looking at the gates of paradise. And before you say Wuthering Waves of Genshin, no, I don't count Genshin as a character action game, but some people think it is. No, what I want is a real non-gacha co-op character action game. Please don't say the Ninja Turtles game.
Starscream failed. Guess that makes me the new leader of the Decepticons. Anybody else want this job?
But what's a character action game without enemies that you enjoy fighting? And thankfully, Transformers Devastation has them in spades. There's your standard grunt enemy types that exist to get comboed on, with some variations that comes with a shield making you unable to attack from the front without opening them up first, and the stronger, nimbler one that can dodge your attacks. There's also the big hammer guys that you need to deal with, else they'll just beat you to death with hammers. Not fun. They're fun to fight though, just not the beat you to death with hammers part, that's not fun. They're basically the hammer enemies from Metal Gear Rising, with slow but hard-hitting telegraph attacks, which actually means that their attacks will come out slower than the flash and sound cue suggest. This already tripped me up multiple times, especially when I'm fishing for focus time. And also super armor, forcing you to dodge mid-combo. There's also the Seekers, which will attack you from range with their guns and hover above you. In other games, they could be annoying. Unfortunately for them though, this is a Platinum game, so you can just dodge their attacks to activate focus time, then they'll be helpless as you beat or shoot the scrap out of them. Not so much the elite version though, as they'll immediately go into violate you at melee range. Then there's the Insecticons. While I do say that their bot form is fun to fight, their insect form is not, as they like the feedback that the humanoid enemies have when you beat them up. And they also have these annoying gimmicks like being able to shoot lightning to snipe you, and changing the geometry of the level, making their fights really chaotic but not in a really fun way. Anyway, the enemies are not pushovers, and they can easily send you to the scrapyard violently if you're not careful. They also have a nice synergy with each other, which is important for a character action game. I think there's good variety here. Not as much as other character action games, but still enough. It is a short game after all. And they only get more dangerous as you raise the difficulty, which is fun. And it's not just a numbers game either, with the higher difficulties completely removing their inhibitors, and will immediately try to violate you the moment they see you. You know that games like this has the enemies taking turns while attacking you? Yeah, that's gone now. But that's all for the normal enemy types. Here comes the bosses! Transformers Devastation has all the classic Decepticons that you want to fight. From Megatron, Starscream, Shockwave, Soundwave, all package included, Blitzwing, Motor Master, who? Devastator, and Menasor, who? And all of these fights are a treat, with all of them also having a kick-ass track to fight with. Where they're not visually impressive or spectacle heavy as say Bayonetta or Metal Gear Rising's boss fights, they're all still really fun to fight with their own gimmick for you to deal with. Like Sunwave's buddies, huge combiner fights, and Blitzwing having 3 distinctly different forms, while also having extremely tough armor. Fighting Starscream in the middle of a wormhole where gravity has gone out for lunch. And if you don't like gimmick fights, the game also has normal mano-a-mano fights, with Megatron and Motor Master being highlights. These fights can be quite brutal too on higher difficulties, but they're never really unfair. It just requires you to use all the tools at your disposal, like delayed sticky bombs, grappling hooks, your skills, and of course, your reflexes.
A test of your reflexes!
The bosses are super fun, especially once they start doing boss rushes, which some people might not like because they say it's lazy. I mean, it is, but I still love it, as it allows me to test my skills against old bosses and see how far I've come at this point of the game. And they also have challenge arenas, where it's just boss rush against every character in the game. And yes, I do mean every character, including the other Autobots, and this rocks, though fighting them has their own quirks, as they probably won't playtested as much as the Decepticons, leading to things like everyone being able to spam their ults. This is especially annoying with Optimus because of how good his ult is, and now he can spam it back to back. It can veer from challenging to frustrating real quick, because they're not playing the same role as you, while having all the advantages. Thankfully this is a side content, so it's not mandatory. And speaking about the challenges, there's a lot of them, with quite a bit of variety too. You get to do some stuff that you didn't get to do in the story, like fighting the Autobots as I mentioned before. So they're pretty fun, but they're basically the VR missions for Metal Gear Rising, so if you like those, you're gonna like them here too. There's also a cool model viewer that also plays the character's theme, so it doubles as a jukebox. And that's it for the gameplay, and now the story. Oh boy!
Rise and eject. Autobots and barrier eject.
Destroy first, think later!
Alright, gotta be honest with you guys, but my entry to the Transformers series were the Bayformer movies. Yeah, I know. But to be fair, I was a child at the time, and I don't have easy access to Transformers media before the movie came out. Let's just say that I've familiarized myself now, but still nowhere near as knowledgeable as I was with, like, let's say Metal Gear or Dragon Ball. Not Sonic though, definitely not Sonic. But here we go with the spoilers, I guess. So out of nowhere, a bunch of metal tentacles start protruding out of the earth in a city somewhere on Earth, causing devastation. Insecticons also ominously swarming the sky. Megatron and the cons was the first to arrive to find out what happened there. Shockwave detected something interesting in the air as the Decepticons makes their move towards the city. After the city has been successfully evacuated, the Autobots arrive to assess the situation. Of course, with the Decepticons already there, some fighting ensues, until they find the entrance to the ship, and they found out what the ship holds, and what Megatron intends to do with it, and that is to terraform Earth into a new Cybertron, basically killing everyone on the planet except the Cybertronians. The story wasn't very deep, and the characterizations of the characters remain seemingly loyal to the original, at least the way it seems like from watching people that actually are familiar to the original material. And I do like the little details that changes depending on who you're playing.
Tronian Matrix bearer designated Optimus Prime. Through the Matrix, we can foretell your future. You will defeat your great enemy, and the war you have waged will end soon. You will lead your people so that they may face their darkest hour, but they will face it without you.
You say the war will end, and my friends will be safe. That is all I could ever ask.
But with it being a prequel to the movie, the animated one, it doesn't really allow for a lot of character developments. And that's fine, because the game was made for people that were nostalgic for the G1 era. But I do feel like that they're missing an opportunity to show the tragedy of the conflict between the Autobots and the Decepticons, especially after watching Transformers 1. I know it's a different continuity with different characterizations, but I feel like there's so much that could have been done here. But what's done is done. And the stuff we got was okay enough to make me want to play and see the next set piece and battles, without getting in the way of the gameplay. The story was mid to be honest, and super short, like even shorter than Metal Gear Rising, and that's already pretty short, but it still packs a punch gameplay wise, and didn't overstay its welcome. In fact, it's gone too soon.
We will use it to bring our culture and our history back to Cybertron, where it belongs. You have made a great discovery. Let us use it wisely.
I thought you were made of sterner stuff, Optimus.
But not so soon, because the game has a really good new Game Plus mode, where you unlock 2 new difficulty settings, Magnus and Prime. This is where the game gets really fun. Enemy placement gets remixed with later enemies already appearing in the first encounter. Enemies are also far more aggressive than before, with none of that taking turns attacking happening anymore. They do far bigger damage and much faster, but not damage spongy, as long as you keep leveling your characters and weapons up to take the harder, much difficult challenge. And this only gets dialed up even further as you get to Prime difficulty. So there's definitely replay value here, as it should, being a character action game and all. And this is even before I mentioned the challenges, which just adds more replay value to the game. And you can also play these challenges on the harder difficulties once you've unlocked them. In the end, Transformers Devastation was a very short but sweet game, and easily the best Transformers game ever made. I'm sorry, Cybertron series. Platinum delivers that Platinum standard with this one for real, unlike the other budget licensed titles like Legend of Korra or TMNT, which were disappointing to say the least. It's a bit expensive if you only play through the game once then never bother with it again, but if you like to replay games to get the higher score, get all the unlockables, or just mastering the game on a higher difficulty, then it earns its price point, I think. Especially on a discount. If the game didn't get delisted, that is. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate that you managed to make it to the end of this video. Like, share and subscribe because it will really help the channel. I'm gonna sleep now and have dreams of rolling out. See ya.